In a village where the poor are worth little and debts cost lives, a mute young peasant girl is torn from her home and given as payment to a baron feared by all. Silent, yet not submissive, she goes unnoticed by the nobility's eyes until the heir of the manor returns from the city. Amidst hidden glances and improbable encounters, a forbidden feeling is born. But when the night of escape finally arrives, something happens, and the fate of both changes forever. Hello, my friends. I am Linda, and this is Linda Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. The sun had not yet risen when Abraham staggered down the steps of the small wooden cabin. His awkward silhouette was cast against the wall in the dim light of the lamp that Emma always left on when her father went out at night. This life is no life at all, Abraham thundered, stumbling into the kitchen table and knocking over a clay jar that shattered on the floor. Emma! Where are you, girl? There was no response. There never was. Emma's silence was the only constant in Abraham's erratic life. He staggered into the tiny living room, knocked over a chair and finally collapsed on the cold kitchen floor, mumbling incoherent words before falling into a deep sleep, still dressed in the dirty clothes from working in the fields. From the door of the small room, Emma watched her father with sad eyes. At 19, she carried the marks of a hard life on her delicate face. Her brown hair was tied in a simple braid, and her calloused hands told the story of someone who grew up too fast. Sighing silently, she took a rough blanket and covered her father. As difficult as their relationship was, he was all she had since her mother had left 13 years ago. After that, her voice also went away. At least that's what everyone thought. When the first rays of sun came through the poorly fitted wooden slats, Emma was already up. She set the table with the little they had, a kettle of bitter coffee and a piece of hard bread left over from the day before. She arranged everything and went out to fetch some milk from the neighbouring farm, her small morning ritual that ensured at least one fresh item for breakfast. Abraham woke up with a pounding headache. His body ached from sleeping on the hard kitchen floor. Confused, he looked around and saw the set table, the coffee, the bread. Emma, as always, had taken care of everything before leaving. A feeling of misery momentarily washed over him, but it was soon replaced by the reminder that had been haunting him for weeks, the loan deadline. Today was the day. Baron Jeremy would come to collect. Abraham barely had time to bring the cup of coffee to his lips when he heard the sound of horses' hooves approaching. His heart raced. Through the window, he saw the entourage. Jeremy at the front, mounted on his imposing black horse, followed by two men with stern expressions, his inseparable henchmen, known in the region for their violent collection methods. God help me, murmured Abraham, running his trembling hands through his grey, dishevelled hair, trying in vain to improve his deplorable appearance. The cabin door swung open with a kick. Baron Jeremy was a 50-year-old man, robust, with a well-trimmed moustache and fine clothes that contrasted with the poverty of the surroundings. His cold eyes scanned the interior of the house with disdain. "Good morning, Abraham. You look awful. Didn't you sleep well last night?" said Jeremy with a mocking tone as he took off his leather gloves one by one. "Hello, Mr. Jeremy. How are things in business?" replied Abraham, forcing a smile that did not hide the expression of fear in his eyes. Everyone in that region knew what happened to those who did not pay their debts to the Baron. Men disappeared. Families lost everything. Some said the cellars of Jeremy's mansion held secrets that should never come to light. Business is thriving. But I didn't come to talk about my affairs, Abraham. The smile disappeared from Jeremy's face. You know very well that my visit is not a courtesy between friends. I came to collect what you owe me. Abraham swallowed hard. Mr. Jeremy, I tried to gather the money, but the harvest wasn't good this year, and... His words stumbled over each other as his eyes noticed the henchmen dismounting from their horses and slowly walking toward him. It was then that, along the dirt road, Abraham saw Emma returning home. She walked with light steps, carrying a small bottle of milk. Her simple, faded dress swayed gently with the morning breeze. A desperate idea crossed Abraham's mind. "Take my daughter!" he shouted, pointing at Emma, who was now approaching, confused by the scene. "I offer you my daughter in exchange for settling my debt." Jeremy frowned, turning to look at the young woman who had stopped a few meters away, her eyes wide with incomprehension. "Are you trying to trade your mute daughter? What am I going to do with a mute?" Jeremy laughed, looking at his men, who laughed in unison. "She can work in your house or wherever you need," Abraham continued, desperate. "And above all, she won't complain." Emma remained still, the milk bottle trembling in her hands. Her eyes darted between her father and the Baron, trying to comprehend the enormity of what was happening. Jeremy studied the young woman for a moment. She was beautiful, despite the simple clothes. Brown hair framed a face with delicate features. Her hands, although calloused from hard work, were small and well made. A young and strong maid could be useful in the mansion. "Grab the girl! We're even, Abraham!" ordered Jeremy with a dismissive wave of his hand. The men advanced towards Emma, who dropped the bottle of milk, breaking it and spilling its precious contents on the ground. She tried to run, but was quickly overpowered. Her eyes pleaded with her father, who simply looked away, a smile of relief crossing his lips. "Don't worry, daughter. It's better this way," said Abraham, as the men dragged her towards one of the horses. "You'll have food and shelter, more than I can give you." Emma was lifted and placed on a horse, silent tears streaming down her face. As the group departed, she looked one last time at the cabin that had been her home. Abraham had already gone inside, closing the door behind him. The mansion of Baron Jeremy stood imposingly at the top of the hill, with its stone walls and tall windows. To Emma, who had always lived in simplicity, that place seemed like a castle out of a fairy tale, not a happy one, but the kind where maidens were imprisoned. The housekeeper, Mrs. Winters, a stern woman with greying hair and permanently pursed lips, received the new maid with clinical indifference. "So you are the mute," she remarked, walking around Emma as if she were evaluating an animal. "Well, at least we won't have to hear complaints. You'll sleep in the back room with the other maids, get up before dawn, and work until everyone is served and the house is in order. Understood?" Emma nodded, keeping her eyes lowered. "Great. Agnes will show you your tasks. And don't try to run away. There's nowhere to go, and Lord Jeremy has eyes all over the region." The following days were of brutal adaptation. Emma would wake up with the first light the fireplaces, help prepare breakfast, clean the rooms, wash clothes in the cold stream at the back, scrub the polished wooden floor until her knees hurt, and only rest when everyone had already retired. Her only joys came from the moments she managed to escape to the stable. There, among the horses and other farm animals, Emma found peace. The goats, chickens, and especially the horses became her friends, and it was these feathered and furry friends who guarded her greatest secret. "You know," she whispered to the horse that was calmly chewing its hay, "I'm not really mute." Her voice came out hoarse from disuse, but it was still melodious and soft. "When I was little, my father always yelled at my mother. Whenever she said something that displeased him, he hurt her." Emma stroked the animal's neck as she spoke. "One day, when I was 4 years old, I said the soup was salty. He overturned the table and my mother tried to defend me, but, well, that night she ran away. The next day, when he asked me if I had helped my mother to escape, I didn't answer. I was so scared that I couldn't speak. And then it was easier to continue in silence." Emma sighed, remembering those dark days. Over time, everyone thought that the trauma from my mother's departure left me mute. And I discovered that silence protected me. When I grew up, my father tried to sell me into marriage several times, but nobody wanted a wife who couldn't speak. She smiled sadly. "Ironic that in the end he sold me anyway, isn't it?" Absorbed in her memories, Emma was singing an old song and didn't notice the presence of someone at the entrance of the stable. "I liked the music." Emma turned abruptly, her heart racing. A tall, well-dressed young man stood a few meters away, watching her with curiosity. His eyes were a deep blue, contrasting with his dark hair. There was something gentle in his gaze, so different from the coldness she found in the Baron's eyes. "You don't need to be afraid," he said, approaching slowly like someone trying not to scare a wild animal. "I'm Thomas, Jeremy's son. I just got back from the city where I study." Emma backed away, looking around as if searching for an escape route. "I won't tell anyone," Thomas continued, his voice calm. "Your secret is safe with me." She stared at him, suspicious, as he approached one of the horses. "This is Midnight," he said, stroking the neck of the black animal. "It was my 16th birthday present. It's been with me for years. And you? What's your name?" After a long silence, Emma replied, her voice almost inaudible. "Emma." Thomas smiled. "Nice to meet you, Emma. Don't worry, this will be our secret." That night, during the formal dinner to celebrate Thomas's return, Emma was serving the dishes under the watchful eye of Mrs. Winters. Baron Jeremy presided over the table, talking about business and local politics while Thomas seemed distracted. "What do you think of the sauce, Emma?" Thomas suddenly asked, interrupting his father's monologue. The room fell silent. Jeremy looked at his son in astonishment. "She won't answer you, my son. This poor girl is mute," said Jeremy, sipping his wine. "Her father traded her for a debt. Pathetic but useful for us." Thomas met Emma's gaze, a silent plea to keep her secret. He nodded almost imperceptibly. "Sorry, I didn't know," he said, turning his attention back to his plate. In the days that followed, Thomas and Emma continued to meet in the stable. There, shielded by the sounds of the animals and away from the curious eyes of the big house, she began to open up. "It was never a conscious choice at first," Emma explained, while brushing Midnight's mane. "But then, I realized people treat you differently when they think you cannot speak. Some are crueler, believing they can't be challenged. Others are kinder, out of pity. But in the end, everyone reveals who they really are." Thomas watched her, fascinated by the wisdom he found in that young peasant girl. "And my father, how does he treat you?" "Like I am invisible, which, believe me, is a relief." As the weeks passed, these encounters became the center of existence for both of them. Thomas spoke about his law studies, his dreams of changing the injustices he saw around him, many perpetrated by his own father. Emma shared stories of her childhood before the silence, of her connection with nature, and her small dreams of freedom. On a particularly hot afternoon, sitting in the shade of an oak tree behind the stable, Thomas took Emma's hand in his. "I've never met anyone like you," he said, his voice laden with emotion. "Someone who has faced so much adversity and still manages to see beauty in the world." Emma smiled, a delicate blush colouring her cheeks. "And I never thought I would find someone who wanted to hear what I have to say." The first kiss came naturally, like the meeting of two souls that recognize each other. Gentle and hesitant at first, it deepened with the urgency of someone discovering a long-sought treasure. But the summer passed quickly. Thomas's vacation was coming to an end, and with it, the bubble of happiness they had built. "Come with me," Thomas proposed one afternoon while they watched the passing clouds. "In 6 months I will finish my studies and already have a job secured at the law firm. We can start a new life, far from here." "Your father would never allow it," Emma replied, the reality weighing on her words. "We don't need his permission. We can run away. On the next new moon, when the night is darkest, I'll be waiting with horses at the end of the property near the stream." The plan was simple. In the darkness of the new moon, when everyone was asleep, Emma would leave the mansion with only the essentials. Thomas would wait for her at the edge of the property, and together they would ride to the neighbouring town, where they would catch the train the following morning. On the eve of the planned escape, The mansion was bustling with preparations for a party that the Baron would host for important businessmen from the region. Emma worked tirelessly, polishing the silverware and helping to prepare the guest rooms, while her heart beat fast with the prospect of the freedom that would come the following night. What she didn't know was that her plans had been discovered. Agnes, one of the oldest maids, had overheard a conversation between Emma and Thomas in the stable, and, driven by jealousy and loyalty to the Baron, revealed everything to Jeremy. That night, as Emma finished her chores, she was summoned to the Baron's office. With her heart tight, fearing that her secret had been revealed, she entered the dimly lit room, illuminated only by a candle holder. Jeremy was standing by the fireplace, a glass of brandy in his hand. Thomas, seated in an armchair, had a pale and tense face. "It seems you two have a secret," Jeremy began, his voice dangerously calm. "Or rather, two secrets. One about a voice that supposedly doesn't exist, and another about an escape that will not happen." Emma felt the blood freeze in her veins. She looked at Thomas, who met his father's gaze with determination. "Don't be foolish, Thomas," Jeremy continued, walking slowly around the office. "You could have any woman, and yet you want a mute maid. A nameless peasant without a dowry, without family. What will your fellow lawyers say?" "She is not mute, father," Thomas replied, standing up, "and I don't care what they will say. Emma is the bravest and most genuine person I've ever met." Jeremy laughed, a cold sound that echoed off the office walls. "Ah, so it's true. The little impostor does have a voice. How convenient." He turned to Emma. "How many more lies are you hiding, girl?" Emma straightened her shoulders, and for the first time since arriving at that house, looked directly into the Baron's eyes. "No others, sir." Her voice, though trembling, was clear. "And yes, I love your son. Not for his position or wealth, but for the man he is despite all of that." Jeremy narrowed his eyes, surprised by the eloquence of the young woman he had believed to be simple. "You will not go with her, Thomas," declared the Baron, turning to his son. "Tomorrow you will return to the city to complete your studies. As for you," he said, pointing at Emma, "tomorrow we will decide your fate. Now leave." Thomas took a step forward. "If she leaves, I will go with her. You would choose a maid over your inheritance, over your future." The Baron seemed genuinely perplexed. "I would choose Emma in any circumstance, father," Thomas replied firmly. "Hearts communicate without words. A glance is capable of saying more than any speech, and each look from her tells me what I need to know." Jeremy studied his son for a long moment. There was something in his determination that, reluctantly, the Baron admired. Finally, with a defeated sigh, he waved his hand. "Go away then, both of you, but do not expect a penny from me, Thomas. Not now, nor ever." The next morning, before the sun rose, Thomas and Emma departed. Not in the dead of night as they had planned, but under the rising light of a new day, with only what they could carry and the promise of a future built with their own hands. 6 months later, in a small house on the outskirts of the city where Thomas worked as a novice lawyer, Emma was planting flowers in the newly prepared garden. Her belly already showed the first signs of the life growing inside her. "How are my loves?" Thomas asked, embracing her from behind and resting his hands on her belly. And so it was. In the house they built together, Emma's voice was never silenced again. She sang to her children, told stories, expressed her opinions and desires. The girl who once chose silence as protection now taught her children about the power of words. Baron Jeremy never sought out his son or met his grandchildren, but Thomas and Emma built a family where love and respect blossomed freely. In Emma's silence was hidden a strength that few understood. In Thomas's love she found the courage to finally speak. And together, they wrote a story where no voice ever needed to be silenced again. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.